have your company. I'm David Foster, and this is Roundtable. No rubles, no gas. The shutdown is no longer unthinkable. Russia's turned off gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria over their refusal to pay in Russian money. And the Kremlin's also warned that any other countries refusing to pay in rubles could face the same fate. The demands came as a response to the West's tight sanctions on Russia over the attack on Ukraine. So whose gas might be cut off next? Very good to have your company. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen criticised Russia for using gas as an instrument of blackmail and highlighted that the bloc is ready to move away from a dependency on Russian gas.
Today, the Kremlin failed once again in his attempt to sow division among member states. The era of Russian fossil fuel in Europe is coming to an end. Europe is moving forward on energy issues.
However, it isn't clear yet how the European Union would manage additional cut-offs if Russia stopped sending gas to other European countries, as 40% of the EU's gas does come from Russia. So does Europe have alternatives to Russian gas? OK, time for us to turn up the heat, that is, if we have enough gas. We go to Zurich and welcome Monika Morawiecka, Senior Advisor at what's known as the Regulatory Assistance Project. In Berlin, we see Thomas O'Donnell, Geopolitics Analyst on oil and gas markets, and in Sofia, Mariya Trifonova, who's from Sofia University and the European Council on Foreign Relations. Great to have you all on. We have Poland on the left, we have Bulgaria on the right. You're not German, but you're sitting in Berlin, Thomas, but I'm going to come to the two countries that have been hit first of all. And Mariya, if I can come to you and say, does it appear that Poland and Bulgaria have been hit for taking a moral stand which other countries have not yet had the courage to do?
It should be actually underlined that the reason that Bulgaria and Poland came first was actually just the order of contractual agreement and the payment. So this is indeed a very serious situation for those two countries, being the first. But I should say the situation in Bulgaria currently seems pretty dramatic, but not because economical reasons, but for political ones.
Monika, which countries are next likely to have their gas turned off if, as we're hearing from Mariya, it's simply a matter of time and there's a queue?
Yeah, I don't suppose to know all the contractual, obligations on all the countries in Europe. So I'm not sure who will be next in line, especially that these are many companies rather than countries. So it's many more than 27 parties to the game. But of course, you have to ask yourself whether this really is the only reason for the gas cut. Bulgaria and Poland, I think, share also this stance that we were supposed to get off Russian gas this year anyway. So from unilaterally from just expiring contracts, at least on the Polish side, the contract with Russia will expire end of this year.
Thomas, let's run through. Beg your pardon. Carry on, please.
And it was not to be renewed.
So Russia may be feeling a bit sore about this. I want to get into the financial arrangements of paying in euros, which can then be converted into rubles in just a moment. But let's take a look at some of the countries that depend on Russian gas. I'll just pick 4 out of a list. Moldova, on the borders with Ukraine, 100%. Bulgaria, 77%. Germany, 49%. Poland, 40%. And we're going to hear now from Bulgaria's Prime Minister.
The gas cut on the part of Gazprom is a gross violation of the contract and blackmail to use a payment plan in rubles that is outside the contract. and is to be done through third parties, which guarantees neither the deliveries nor the money of the Bulgarians. We won't give in to such racketeering.
So, Thomas, I want to come to you and say, is this blackmail on Russia's part?
Well, I think you have to realize something. People who've dealt with Gazprom, diplomats in Europe, Americans, for many years, Gazprom can't be considered a normal gas company. It's what we call an instrument of state, in the same way as the Russian military is an instrument of state. Gazprom has about the same reserves of gas and oil, more gas, than the Saudis, and they make only a fraction of the money the Saudis do because it's precisely always been used for this sort of purpose. So yes, this is a particular case, and Putin's playing a game. I would say he would be foolish strategically. It would be a strategic error if he cut off, say, the vast majority of the gas to Europe because he desperately needs the money. We can go into that later. So what he's doing now, I think, is playing a game, he's probing. He's trying to divide and conquer, trying to terrorize some countries and so forth, some countries that are more timid than others. And he's playing a game, and that's what's going on.
What are we looking at here? I think I mentioned that Germany was 49% dependent upon Russian gas. How long before that country, which has been accused, if you like, of not showing a great deal of solidarity in this case, how long before it actually is forced either to no longer use Russian gas or to pay for it in rubles?
Well, to be honest, if it's up to Germany, if it's up to the present government, whether it's the Green Minister Habeck or Mr. Schulz from the SPD, it'll be quite a long time. I would guess it'd be a few years. The rest of Europe probably won't put up with it that long. So Germany is going to have to consistently decrease the amount of gas it takes from Russia, and it plans to do that. But it has to build infrastructure. It has to build LNG terminals, these LNG regasification ships, in order to be able to bring in LNG over time. And that's something it was warned to do. I mean, I'm talking about not just suggestions from the Poles or suggestions from the Americans, but some pretty harsh discussions between diplomats, some harsh words that you need to do this so that you aren't the problem child of Europe if Putin does exactly what he's done now. That's what they were warned, and they did.
Yeah, okay. Monika, let me ask you this one. In terms of preparedness, you say that it was quite possible that Poland was going to cut off the contract anyway with Russia at the end of the year. What alternatives are there in Poland? What will the country be using?
Well, I wasn't saying it was possible. It was decided. And it had been decided many years ago, actually. So the first time that Poland started doing something about Russian gas dependency was back in 2006. And not many people remember, but that was a dispute between Ukraine and Russia actually cut gas supplies to Ukraine in January 2006. And after that, the Polish government decided on building an LNG terminal, which was completed already almost 7 years ago now. So first LNG terminal came up 7 years ago. Then in 2016, there was a decision taken to construct a gas pipeline connecting Poland to Norwegian gas fields through Denmark. And this gas pipeline will be finished by the autumn this year. And also there were other diversification investments made, a gas pipeline to Lithuania that was just commissioned 2 days ago, and a reverse flow from Germany. It was also put together. So Poland has been preparing for this scenario already.
And is there a feeling in Poland? Is there a feeling in Poland that other countries should have done the same? That they've just been not prepared for any eventuality?
Poland called for this for more solidarity in gas supplies for many years. I think the first time it was 2011 that Poland flagged the idea of joint gas purchases from Russia. of like energy. The first idea of energy union was about joint gas purchases. So yes, we were calling for that.
But I'm wondering why it didn't
you,
happen. Why did other countries hold off? Was it because they didn't recognize the threat, or they were too comfortable with the deal that they'd got with Russia?
Many things. For many years, you have to remember that really Gazprom was giving different terms to different countries. Poland historically was paying much more for gas than, for example, Germany per BCM per unit of gas. So there were these purely economic reasons. They probably were geopolitical reasons. I don't want to go into that, but what I would just say that every country is making their own decisions based on their own goals and their own interests.
So perhaps self-interest.
Economy of their people.
Yeah,
yes.
Geopolitics, Thomas, let me come to you on that one and ask you what part that has to play in these decisions, and then what other leverage besides its energy supplies does Russia have?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's in Monika's being a bit polite. Here in Berlin, I heard mostly privately business leaders and diplomats, officials mock the Poles for wanting to buy an LNG terminal, an LNG floating off. Set up the LNG terminal at Swinoujscie to have some alternative. That this was just their paranoia and so forth. I would say this: if we want to look at the long-term geopolitical reason for this, to be frank, starting in the 1970s, West Germany started to think about, well, we have the predominance or hegemony of the United States in international oil and gas. Then it was mainly oil. And there were problems in the Middle East. It was the German government that proposed to the Russians. We know this now from academic research in the archives in Russia some years ago. It was the German side that convinced the Central Committee of the Soviet Union that it was possible to develop these gas reserves way up in Siberia, to build the pipelines. The Soviets didn't have the technology or the finance, and the German side said, we will supply it. So basically the plan came from the German side to build this. And this, I would say, has been continuing. There's a whole sort of version 2.0 of rebuilding all these pipelines, Nord Stream and so forth, but it's a continuation. For Germany, this is an option not to be under the predominance or the hegemony of the United States, to have some options. They're with the West, they're with the global system, but under that system, they want certain strategic independence, and this gave it to them. They could get oil and gas directly from Russia. And they thought the Russians, because they are the ones who paid and invented this system for the Russians, they thought they would never turn on them. I have been told that by executives and others here. They won't turn on Germany. And now I understand what the relationship was.
Okay, maybe Germany is coming up to facing a reckoning because Russia has doubled its fossil fuel revenue since the invasion of Ukraine began. 65 billion from exports of oil, gas and coal in 2 months. Germany, the biggest importer, more than $9 billion. Italy, not far down the list, more than 6. And then we go all the way down to India at the bottom of the top 20, round about 1 billion. Are these countries indirectly paying for Russia's war?
To me?
Why not?
The question? Okay. Yes, these countries are paying. This partnership, it's sort of like the partnership the United States used to have with Venezuela. They developed the oil system there, and then the Venezuelans had owned an oil company, a gasoline company, and so forth inside the United States. It was vertically integrated. It's the same thing Germany and Russia did together. There is this vertical integration. Germany used the Russian oil and gas, the partnership, to get this vertical integration, not just into Germany, but throughout Europe, especially Central and Eastern Europe and the Baltics. And the idea was this gave entree to German capital, to German business and soft power in the region, until it turned into its opposite, until Russia became a problem. So yes, this was a strategic choice. Since President Reagan, the United States has been absolutely opposed to this. The German side will say that's because the Americans want to run the system. Look at all the mistakes they made in the Middle East. We don't want any part of that. Okay. But since the Reagan era, they had promised Reagan they would never be more than 15% dependent. And Reagan put sanctions that were defeated. So this is a long history on this question. And yes, the countries in the East have an experience, a historical experience with Russia, where they don't like this strategy.
Mariya, let me ask about something we heard from Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, at the beginning of the programme, suggesting that what the Kremlin is doing is, as she put it, an attempt to sow division among member states. With what has happened to Bulgaria, with what has happened to Poland, with the vacillation of Germany and this idea that perhaps you can pay in euros and then Russia will be allowed to convert it into rubles in certain instances. Hasn't that division already been sown?
I completely agree with this. Indeed, the moves of all the European countries are pretty important right now. And it's extremely important that all European countries and the companies in Europe stay united in this situation. This is something which we are already seeing in Bulgaria. Any news about EU countries making ruble payments to Russia additionally shake the fragile public support of the Bulgarian society to the national government because the ordinary people are blaming the policymaker in the country for acting too overweening. And in addition, I assume that this is actually the Putin's game to prove to us how divided we are really when it comes to our economic interests. So that is why I think the dependency, the import dependence rates of each countries are not so important in this case. It is more about the huge volumes which are some countries are demanding of natural gas and how they could be replaced in a short and long term. In Bulgaria, the situation is, as I said at the very beginning, more depending on political factors than the economic, because although we are dependent to 75% on Russian gas, the economy or the natural gas market is pretty small in the country. So we have, especially this period of the year, in this season, we have several alternative options. And for us, it's not so critical, especially currently now, there are probably 15 large industrial companies which are depending on natural gas supply. Energy generation is not dependent on gas in the country. 1/3 of the natural gas demanded in the country goes to the Sofia district heating company, which is now over because of the heating season is over. Gasification in households is really low. What is the large question is now, it's not about the energy security and the security of the supplies, but it's more about the price.
Okay, I come back once again, Monika, to this point I made earlier on. Every single euro that is paid into Gazprom Bank, which is then turned into the Russian currency, the ruble, is paying for another bullet, another battalion, and prolonging the war.
Well, you've got this terrible choice to make that, even if Europe stopped all Russian fuel deliveries, I mean, if they were all stopped, Russia would still be getting revenues from elsewhere, although not as big as now from Europe, because they cannot easily substitute European demand for other demand, especially for gas. So yes, that would, of course, diminish the returns of the Russian state. But of course, on this other spectrum, you've got the cost to European economy, which would be huge as well. So there's this fine balancing act, and I think it's very difficult to say what's the best policy. I think one of the options that was flagged by many academics by now, also we are doing it at RAP, thinking about introducing rather a tax on Russian fuels rather than bans, because this would actually do something about the revenues, about the price that Russia gets from these sales of these fossil fuels to Europe.
Okay, so we have Poland that by the end of the year may not be using Russian energy supplies any longer. We have Germany that's sort of vacillating this way and that, which, as I understand it, Thomas, you believe is going to go back to getting Russian energy the moment all this is over.
It's interesting. I mean, let me just make clear, there's other people in Germany who don't agree with any of what I'm describing. I'm talking about the ruling coalition and some others now. Even when the Nord Stream 2 pipeline was killed, Schultz prevaricated, kind of hesitated on it, and Biden standing next to him said, no, it's dead. And then Halbach, the minister back here, the Green minister, said, well, in the medium term. And that next day, the spokesman at the White House said, it's a piece of junk metal at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, okay? So they've always, and now, even after yesterday, this announcement that, oh, Germany agrees to completely cut off Russian oil. Well, it turns out it's gradual. And then you see these mentions in the press where the minister and the chancellor are saying, it's not going to come back until there's a peace deal in Ukraine that the Ukrainians like. What are they thinking about? That's not the way Poland and Bulgaria and the rest of Europe. Once we go through this, we don't want to go back as long as Putin's ever there. And I'll tell you, I just have to say, there's a difference in oil and gas, if I may. Oil could have been cut 2 months ago totally to Europe. I don't want to go through all the technical details. There's lots of oil in storage. The Druzhba pipeline is what the Germans and some other Central European countries complain about because it's difficult to get oil to those pipelines from the sea. But those pipelines were cut off in 2019, and according to Citibank, they had a deal between them to put an extra 150 million barrels of Urals oil in storage. That's enough for 170 days. They have maybe 120.
Okay, so there's not everybody's telling the truth, if you like. Do you want to very quickly list those companies, if we want to split it into an us and them camp, us being those that have had their gas supplies cut off, and them being the countries that are going to be very slow at doing so and reluctant. Thomas, you first, and then Mariya, I'll come to you.
Well, there's Germany, but there's there's obviously like Slovakia, and there might be other Central European countries that are small countries that are very dependent. And what they really want to know from Germany is, if we go along and we cut this off, are you going to take care of us? If there are shortages and high prices and you don't have enough for your people, you're the big country, will you share with us? And the German chancellor could go a long way in sorting that out.
Okay, Mariya, do you think there's going to be help on offer immediately? Because as I understand it, in terms of heating oil or gas, Bulgaria really doesn't have very much time.
For Bulgaria, the deliveries are secured for the 1 month. This is the official communication from the Ministry of Energy. Plus, we are actually having the interconnector Bulgaria-Greece, which was expected to be finalized next month. But we can't expect that it would be operational probably by in the next few months, maybe beginning of July or August. But the reserve capacity amounts to 1.5 cubic meters. So this is like two-thirds of the demand
so
in
maybe
the
another
country.
4 or 5 weeks left. I want to wrap this up, if I may, Monika. We only have about another minute. Do you think the EU has shown any courage in this, or has it just been down to individual countries?
Well, I think the EU is showing leadership clearly, and I actually wanted to sum up this with what Mariya before said, that it's really an issue about solidarity. I think there is this big chance now for the whole Europe to show solidarity, and also I think it's not about only replacing Russian gas or oil with other fuels from elsewhere, but it's about using less gas and oil and coal, all fossil fuels. And I think this is what Europe is doing. And actually Germany will be doing as well. So I do not fully agree with what has been said, that Germany will just go back to where it started, because Germany has a really big expansion plans for renewables that will reduce demand for gas massively. And this is what we should all be doing, reducing demand for gas, whether it's Russian gas or some other gas. Just reducing the demand is the only way, sustainable way to go.
Okay. Well, a lot of that was said about Germany before the war in Ukraine started. I would imagine that the country has some way to go in repairing its reputation amongst those countries that have probably been hit more directly than it has so far. Listen, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Shrug your shoulders, Thomas. I know it's a very difficult situation. Much appreciated. Monika, thank you very much. Mariya, thank you, wherever you're watching. This edition of Roundtable, we hope you will join us next time. Until then, from me, David Foster, and the team, goodbye.